Hey everybody, John Huber here, Maryland K-12. Thibodaux, Louisiana. You probably never heard of that, and honestly, neither have I until this case just came across my radar. Before we go any further, if you wouldn't mind, like and share my videos, I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe to my YouTube channels, share, like, whatever. Give me some comments. I want to hear some comments. Anyway, in August 26, 2025, that's not too long ago. AI generated, and I'm looking at my notes as usual, AI generated nude images of female students were shared on a school bus by allegedly this one kid. The same day, the victim goes and confronts the student whom she believed was the person who did it, and then a fight occurs on the bus. Apparently, this is quite a vicious fight. The girl ends up getting expelled from school for the fight. The boy does not. So they're probably looking at the video and whatever. And then later on, the student was charged by local law enforcement because he violated some, local law or some state laws, I would believe, about these types of cyber crimes. But the issue really comes from this. The issue comes from the fact that the girl is the one who was the victim. She goes after the boys. She gets expelled. They don't. And after some investigation, apparently she and her parents and whatever have reported this in the past. They've gone to the administrators. They've gone to everybody, and nothing was done. Well, the reason nothing was done is, according to the administration, according to the school, they couldn't prove anything. A lot of this stuff was done on Snapchat, and those things pop up and they disappear. They got law enforcement involved after the fight, and then law enforcement finally stepped up and they did a little deeper dive and they found some things and they charged them. They had there was a big public board meeting in November. People were really, really upset about this. And then it led to a lot of threats against individuals, a lot of threats against school officials, against all kinds of people, and it led to lockdowns. A real mess. The girl eventually got back to school on probation, and she had her expulsion amended. But here's the thing. It's the classic story. I reported it, and they didn't do anything about it. And apparently, according to some of the stuff out there, one of the administrators, I think the principal even, he kind of hinted that he didn't think it was really happening. He didn't think it was true. He thought, well, we can't really find anything here, so I don't know. Does she have a history of making things up? That kind of. I'm telling you, if you're an administrator, don't ever ask that question. I can tell you how it's going to go. It's not going to go too well. But anyway, here's the problem that people don't realize when situations. I mean, how many times have you seen it? I did this. I reported all this. Nothing was happening. I went over there and we got in a fight. I'm defending myself, and I'm the one that ends up getting expelled, or my kid's the one that ends up getting expelled. Hold on a second. There's a little more to it. All right. Number one, the school can only act on what it can see. The school can only act on what it does, on the information presented before it. The school, the administrator, the principal, the assistant principal, they can only act based on the information they have and the proof that they have. Now, their proof does not have to be like a legal beyond a reasonable doubt. It has to, and that's a whole different topic about what level of proof they need. But they need something, okay? One person come in and accusing another of making AI deep fakes, and then you can't produce them, you can't find them, you can't have any type of a concrete. That's not enough. But then the girl goes over and she goes after the boys. That's enough because it's right there on the tape, on the video. It's a very difficult situation. A couple of things. Number one, the schools cannot condone or allow retaliatory violence, retaliatory aggression, retaliation in general. You can't, because it would be chaos. All right, so that's number one. Number two, and probably more importantly, schools are not investigators. Folks, these are teachers. These are former music teachers, former former science teachers, math teachers. former counselors. These are educators. They're all of their training and education is in how to teach kids. It's not in how to investigate crimes. So when it comes to a certain level, they have to get local law enforcement involved. They can't subpoena cell phone records. They can't, question kids with the power of subpoena. They can't, empower a grand jury. They can't confiscate things. They can't do that. They don't have those powers. They're not a legal police force. Local authorities, however, they have a lot more, probably more importantly, have more knowledge, but they also have a lot more legal standing to do these kinds of things. So when a student comes in and says, this kid did this kid did that, and the administrators, they bring a few people in, they question a few people, they look at a few things, and the parents are saying, oh, he didn't do that. My kid would never do that. He didn't do that. There's not a lot you can do. So, it's hard for parents to understand that. And, I don't have the answer to that. The answer is to get in touch with local law enforcement yourself if you need to, if you think a law's been broken. In this case, a law had clearly been broken. Now, was the local SRO involved or whatever? I don't know. I think eventually they got involved and they charged these kids. But only after the fight, right? Only after, all heck was breaking loose, and only after everything's coming tumbling down. Yes, so then it's like, yay, police, they got it. Yeah, that's school, boo, school. It's a little more complicated, folks. They're not investigators. They're not trained in this. They don't have the powers. They don't have the resources. They can't do these kinds of things. And people think they can, and they can't. But what they can do is they can act on, they look on the video and they see some girl in there beating the snot out of another kid. They're going to act on that. They're not going to excuse it. They're not going to say, well, good for her. I'm sure personally they're probably thinking, well, good for her. Get a couple extra licks in for me. But officially, folks, it doesn't work that day. I know it doesn't work that way. I know it's hard to hear, and I know I've dealt with that so many times. Parents come to me, Mr. Huber, this kid did that, and you do everything you can. You just can't quite get enough to say, okay, we're going to take some action on it. It's a tough situation. So before you go and crucify the school, okay, think about that, right? They're not police. They're not investigators. They're educators, and they are limited on what they can do. All right. I hope this helps. Thanks. Have a great day.